Welcome to the training. We're going to be looking at joining up multi-core cables as in your workplace. You've probably seen one of the managers do, as in joining cables together, basically for trailers, caravans, which is what you're working on predominantly. 12 volt systems, nothing higher than that. But we need to have a look at the way we number one, find out that there's a problem, which cable it is that's giving us the problem, or indeed we're going to replace the whole cable. Sometimes that's necessary as well. Sometimes it's just a join that you need to make. You found out between this point and this point there's no signal. That's where you need to join the cable in. Most of the cables, especially for lighting on trailers and caravans, are multi-core. That means that there are several cores within the main sheath of the cable. This one is a 5 core, but you can also get 7 core, or even sometimes 12 core. But 5 and 7 are the most common. So we're just going to be using 5 core today. They're all different colours, so you know usually easy to join them up and make sure that they're the correct orientation. But we'll have a look at that in a minute too. So. Now you're going for a certified repairer qualification, yep, which means that this is exactly what you need to know to be a certified repairer. Other things as well, of course, but as far as electrical work goes, this is what you need to know. Now you're reasonably au fait with multimeters. You can use a multimeter, yes, for testing continuity, that sort of thing. You've probably seen the manager do that before, mm-hmm, at Carrick. Yep. Okay. So. Before we start, it's a 20-minute session with no breaks. We've got toilets and water just behind us in the next room. So if you need to make use of the facilities, that's fine. Any questions that you have during the training, please ask away. Maybe at the end something will fire off that you'll need to know, and we can spend some more time at the end of the session too. So, are we ready for the training to begin? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Alrighty, so not only do we need to know how to join these multi-core cables, we also need to make them water and dust tight. And we do that by the use of heat shrink. We have a gun over there, that heat gun over there, which actually shrinks the heat shrink down onto the cable to make it watertight. Today we'll be using a variety of tools, including the solder workstation over there. Now you'll notice that there's 380 degrees on the display of the solder station. That's the temperature of the tip of the soldering iron. It will burn you instantly. It is incredibly hot. Safety's sake, we make sure we don't put that tip near any cabling, near any tools, and especially not near your fingers and your arms and so on. So we make sure that the cable that is attached to the soldering iron doesn't get caught on something and immediately flick up and perhaps grab your arm or whatever. Just make sure that, safety's sake, everything's operating well. It's not going to get caught on anything. Just be aware that it's 380 degrees. It will burn instantly, and it is very painful. You'll also notice that I have a first aid kit with us, just in case. I don't expect that we're going to need it, but safety's sake, I've got the first aid kit here. Anything happens, we immediately run cold water on your burn, and I have some plasters in there and some burn cream that we'll immediately put on. If it's absolutely severe, the hospital's just up the road. That's where we go to emergency and get you taken care of. I don't think that's going to happen today. I think we'll be okay, but just be aware that there is a safety issue with this. So, we've had a look at the cable that we'll be working on today. This is 5 core 12 volt cable. Sometimes like trucks and so on use a 24 volt system. This cable can do 24, however, if I was replacing it, I would go for a heavier duty cable for a 24 volt. Much more capacity to do work. The potential is there to do work. 24 volts, much more than 12 volts, double. So there's a lot of current can flow through these wires. They get very hot and can melt the insulation. That's why we go for a heavier duty cable for 24 volt systems. So we've also got some cable here that I'll get you later on to pair off, which means get rid of the outside insulation and then get rid of the inner insulation on the inner cores. So you can practice that a little bit later on too. So let's have a look at the diagram and the reference material that I've given you. That's just some of the different types of trailer plugs and caravan plugs that are used in Australia. We've got 7-pin round, we've got 5-pin round, we've got small, we've got large, and we've got a flat 7. We've also got a flat 12. The 12 has larger pins on the lower level of the pins, and that's for a higher current. Sometimes caravans can have appliances that are inside the caravan that draw a lot of current. There's a lot of power necessary to run them. Therefore, you have to beef up the pins on the plugs. But generally, that flat 7 is the most common, or a round 7 is the next most common. And that bottom picture just shows you, well, side by side, a whole heap of different plugs. So there's quite a few different ones to look at, especially in the older caravans and older trailers. So if we go on to the next page, this is looking at what we're going to do as far as joining cables together. I've also included there a diagram of the colour codes that are used on the most common plugs and sockets of a trailer or a caravan. So you can see that the colours being used, we try and keep to the same colours, the standard colours, so that if you need to repair this again in the future for some unknown reason, you know that the colour system is correct. It works. And if it's the left-hand indicator, you know that it's the yellow conductor, because that's the standard colour for a left-hand indicator. So that's just sort of for reference material. The other thing we're going to look at is joining cables. Now, when we're soldering cables together, most people will just grab, say, the white to the white, and they'll solder them. Let's make sure that's twisted around like that so we can see it. They'll solder them like so, side by side, solder them like so, or even twist them together. What we want to try and do is get what we call strain relief on the cable. We want if we just use the solder, the stickiness, if you like, of the solder to hold these together, it's quite possible they can part. And sometimes they can part within a number of joins, and you can have one cable let go. Now you've got to work out which cable it is, and then undo everything that you've just done to get to that one cable, because it's all wrapped up together. So what we do is, and you can do this with your hand, you can do this with a small set of needle nose pliers. What we do is we put a hook in that cable, and we put a hook in that cable. And now what we do is, when we bring them together, they hook onto one another. We squeeze that one down, we squeeze that one down, and now the cable actually holds itself together. You could wrap that up in insulation tape and it'd be fine. It'd work forever. We're going to solder it, of course, just to make sure and keep the air out so it doesn't go bad. The solder or the joint doesn't go bad. But that means there's some strain relief on there. It will actually hold together on its own. It's not just relying on the stickiness of the solder. So it's called the hook method. It is, I believe, the best method to use, and I've proved that over many, many years. So that's the method that we're going to use to join our cable today. I'm just going to undo that so we can get some insulation or some heat shrink on. There we go, just flatten those out again. So before we do any joining, we have to think ahead. Not only do we have to make sure that the join is covered and insulated, but eventually we're going to have all of these cables joined and insulated, and then the whole join has to be covered and made watertight and dust tight. So we do this with a number of different sizes of heat shrink, which I've already pre-cut here for the moment just to save you a little bit of time. So what we've got is bits of heat shrink that will go over a cable like so. When we join the cable together, we'll then slide that over that join, heat it with a heat gun. That will shrink down and make that one cable watertight and dust tight. We're going to do that for each individual cable, and of course by the time we've done that, the cable size will have grown considerably because we've got this heat shrink on there as well now. So what we're going to do then is to have a large piece of heat shrink. I'll put it on the other side just to make it easier. Like so. So that when all of those are joined up together, we can slide this large piece of heat shrink over this enlarged repair, and that will also heat that down so that it actually grabs onto that. Now occasionally the larger heat shrink, you have to make it so large to get over this multiple join here that the ends sometimes don't seal properly. So there's a bit of a trick, and the trick is to get another piece of heat shrink that's just big enough to go over that bit of insulation. There's still a little bit of gap there because it needs to shrink. But by the time that one moves over to that one and you shrink both of them, there's a really good chance that that's now going to be sealed properly. So that one's going to shrink onto that one, and that one's going to shrink onto that one. So it's a cascading sort of thing. But then you know that it's dust proof and watertight. So that's what we're going to do with this join here. We're going to leave this large piece here. We're going to leave this medium sort of size piece there. We're going to do exactly the same thing with the other side. We're going to put this medium one on there, and always best to twist the various bits together like so, and the same with these guys. You don't want to have any little strands that are poking out, otherwise it could actually short across into something or other else. Okay, so we have a number of these guys here. Let's just do one at a time. Now our solder station, you'll notice, has now gone down to 180 degrees. If you wouldn't mind just wiping the end of the tip on that cleaner, and we'll get it up to, there we go. It's starting to come up to 380 degrees again. 380 degrees is the best overall temperature for soldering. I've got a roll of solder here. By the time we're ready, that will be ready too. So I'll just do a demonstration for you, and then I'll let you maybe do the rest. So at the minute, just make sure we've got our intermediate bit of heat shrink here, intermediate here, we've got our large here. Okay, we're in business. We have our main little bit of heat shrink here that's going to go over the join. We're going white to white, just make sure that we're going the correct colour. So we're going to get our pliers, we're going to put in a hook, and we're going to put in a hook. Sometimes a little difficult when you've got that heat shrink sitting there that it tends to fall off. So we've got a hook with another hook, like so. Try and get them as neat as possible. Now the problem is, if you have your heat shrink too long and it comes anywhere near where you're going to apply the solder, it will start to melt the end of the heat shrink, and then you can't use the heat shrink because it's already shrunk. So what you can do is use a very fine pair of side cutters and just cut a ring off the end there, and then you can use it again. But the best thing is to measure it so that it actually doesn't go anywhere near that join. So if you could pass me the tip of the soldering iron, thank you. There we go. What I'm going to do is just apply some solder. We need the solder to run along the join. So I'll try and do it this side so you can actually see. Rather than do point on there, we're going to try and run it as much as we can parallel. It will keep the join heated up over a greater distance. We then apply our solder. And we wait for it just to run. It's nice and shiny. And there we go. Now occasionally, because we've got two cables joining together, we might need to flip it over and have a look and make sure that it's covered all of the join, and it has. It's covered all of the join. We're pretty good. We're happy with that one. So if you could place that back in the holder for me, that'd be great. So now we've got our join, we've got our piece of heat shrink right there. And now we need to apply heat to the heat shrink to shrink over the join. So we use a heat gun. You can use the end of the soldering iron, just sort of hold it underneath. I tend to like using a heat gun. I've got more control over it. And you try and make sure before you put the heat shrink on that the wire is straight. If it's bent, when you shrink the heat shrink on, it will stay bent, and it's much harder to try and make a nice slim joint. So we want nice direct cable there. There's no kinks, there's no bends in it. And we're going to go all the way around on that side as well. And that is a water resistant, dust resistant join. Like so. And using the hook method, the cable itself will hold itself in. There's a bit of strain relief there. So, what's the next thing we should do perhaps before we go on with anything else? We probably need to test that to make sure that that actually has joined together and is okay. Our friend the multimeter comes in. Now you've used the multimeter before for continuity.
Yes.
That's right, we'll just leave it sitting up there so we can see it. So what do we put the multimeter on to? I'll hold it so it stays there. Yep. And the function button onto buzzer. Perfect. So we have just joined white to white. So now, there we go. Join is good. She's okay. So I tell you what, would you like to give that a try? Now I've also brought in this gadget. Now it looks like something out of Frankenstein's laboratory, but it's very, very handy for holding things together, and it's also got a floating arm which you can get closer to these alligator clips. So if you want to use that to hold things together while you're trying to solder and so on, that's fine. If you're happy on the flat bench, that's fine as well. Whatever you'd like. Is it all working out? All okay?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Oh, very nice. Very nice job. Yeah. Okay. We are up to soldering. So if possible, try and sort of lay the tip, that's it, along the joint. That's the one. Bit more solder, well, that's it, that's enough solder, just let it run, let it run, let it run. Okay. Beautiful. You even got rid of the excess solder that we didn't need, that was good. Very good. Excellent. Alrighty, so just wait that to cool down just a little bit. If you put the heat shrink on, of course, straight away, the heat shrink will start to melt. So it's best just to let that cool. The other thing we never ever do on a soldering job is to blow on it. If you blow on the soldering joint too soon, you'll make a weakness in the joint. It won't be as strong. So we let it cool just for 20 seconds or so. Then if you need to blow on it and cool it down, that's fine too. But if you blow on it straight away, you'll make the join less good. It's not as strong. So we're okay now to do our heat shrink on that guy. Yep. Still a bit warm. Okay, ready for the heat gun?
Yes, thank you.
Alright, I'll just put it onto the first setting, which is all you'll need. There we go. That's it, all the way around, perfect, good job. Excellent. I think it might have done its job. Beautiful, thank you. What do you reckon?
Pretty good, I think.
Happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, let's do our test. What colour have we got? Green?
Green on green. It works.
Done. Beautiful joint.
Good job.
Good
job.
Good job.
Good job.
So that's great. It's just a matter of repeating that numbers of times to do the rest of the cable, and then we can do the full-on heat shrink to make it absolutely totally finished. Would you like to
Do you want me to
keep
do
going?
that?
Yeah, keep going.
Another couple of guys.
I tell you what, before we do that, I just want to get you to the hardest thing to do is to get the outer shield or outer sheath of the cable off the cable to expose the cores. Once the cores are exposed, you can use this stripper machine, which I think you've seen used before. You can actually strip the cable quite easily, as shown there. That's not an issue. But the outer sheath is too large to do. So there are numbers of different ways of doing this, but the best way I've found is using one of these scalpels. They are incredibly sharp. You do have to be very, very careful on what you do, and they will very easily go all the way through the sheath. There's a bit of sheath that I took off the cable. It will go all the way through, and it will actually nick the internal cables. Once you've done that, the integrity of the cable is gone. The moisture will get in there for sure. So it's a little bit of practice necessary, but you can actually, as you go through the outer sheath, you can feel when you get to the main cables inside. You can actually feel it through the scalpel. So the first thing to do is just to run around and put a ring, if you like, around the cable, and then if you bend it over, you'll be able to see where this sheath is still attached. And just very, very carefully with the end of the scalpel, you can go through and just get rid of the little bits of sheath that are still holding on. All of a sudden, eventually, it will just come off and it'll be fine. And you will not have touched the inner cores. So that's my tip to you, is to use one of these guys. Would you like to have a go at trying to take out off the inner sheath without touching the inner cores.
Sure.
Yeah? I reckon, yeah, that bit'll do, yeah. You might, do you need glasses for this?
No.
No, you're right.
I'm not Simon.
Okay. Well, David, you look so much like Simon that I keep thinking you are.
Simon's got the bad eyes.
Oh, okay. All right.
He's got the bad eyes, I've got ADHD.
Well, that's okay. We can work with that. That's it. When you bend it over, you can see you start to see the colours of the inner cores.
Oh, you got to be careful.
Yeah, and just where that outer sheath is still hanging on, just very carefully. It's under pressure, so it'll let go quite easily because you've bent it over. That's it.
So I didn't get all perfect.
Oh, you never do. This is standard thing to do. You just start it off, and now you just go through and just. It's a fairly tough outer on this cable. It holds on until you actually cut it off.
Well, you want it to be tough
Yeah, of course.
with caravans and
Absolutely.
cars and trailers. I think I'm almost there. There we go.
Beautiful. There you go. So now you check where you put the scalpel in. You make sure that there is no copper showing. If you can see any copper, that means you've gone through the...
What's that white stuff?
It's just a powder they put in to stop the cables from chafing. If they move and they chafe on one another, they can take the insulation off. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Well done.
Oh,
So the scalpel method really does work.
that's good.
It works
It's
very
neat.
well. It is neat. So basically, as I said, as far as the join of the cable goes, it's just a rinse and repeat of the exactly the same thing. Once we've got all of those done, we move these two little bits of heat shrink as far in as we can, like so, and then this guy goes over the whole lot, heat shrink the whole thing, repair is done.
All right, so that goes half. All those will get their little one,
Yeah, correct.
and then these will go.
No, that just stays there.
Oh, yeah.
So we're using that as an intermediate.
Yeah,
between
intermediate.
this
Oh,
guy.
yes, that's right. You
So
did say
that then goes over the whole join.
Yep,
Heat shrink it. It's
Right.
now dust proof. It's now waterproof.
gotcha.
And that is one of the main things that you'll be doing as a certified repairer. Is either replacing cables entirely, or more than often you'll be joining cables. Maybe they've got squished. Maybe the caravan has come. The A-frame of the van has come down on the cable that goes to the car and just squished the cable. You just need to put in a new piece. You need
Yes.
to be able to join in a new
Yes,
piece.
yes.
So, any questions?
No, wonderful.
You did that join beautifully. I mean, that's superb.
Oh,
That is absolutely perfect.
I think. Well, not as good as yours.
I don't know. It's pretty good.
It's not bad, but I
I'd
reckon. I
accept
reckon
that.
if you take your time,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get quicker at it.
Yeah, it's mainly making sure that cable's straight before you solder it and straight before you put the
good
heat
tips.
shrink on.
Yeah.
And that way it makes it a lot easier when you have a number of them to bring them all together, and it doesn't sort of grow into a huge repair. So no, you've done very, very well. That's
Thank you.
excellent.
Thanks,
You're very
Wayne.
welcome.
Thanks for this. This is good.
That should help you on your way, and certified repairer is not too far down the track.
And are you okay to write me a little email to say that I did this training?
Absolutely. Yep. There'll be a form to say that you've done the training. That'll be lodged with CARAC, so they know when you come up for certification as a repairer that you've done this training, you've used the multimeter, you've done the...
Because I have to
repairs.
prove that I've done it.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I'll provide that documentation for sure.
Thanks for that.
You're very welcome. No problem.